Trembling, she stammered out, "Why you?" "Dee, don't come closer. I'm Elena, the eldest daughter of the Forrest family. My family won't let you off if you do anything to me." "Is that so?" Dustin snorted. He raised his hand and delivered a sharp slap across her face. He remarked coldly, "Now that I've made my move, what's the Forrest family going to do?" "You dare to hit me." She covered her red cheek, eyes full of resentment. "You're finished, Reese. I will make you pay." Pay, raising his hand once more. He delivered another hard slap to her face, leaving her disoriented. He continued, "I want to see how you would make me pay." "Why you?" Elena's face was red and swollen with anger and hatred in her eyes. If she had the upper hand, she would tear Dustin apart. "Dustin, that's enough." Eleanor couldn't bear to watch any longer. She sternly shouted, "If you dare mess around again, don't blame me for being rude." "Rude?" Dustin sneered, then delivered a forceful slap across Eleanor's face, asking, "How rude are you planning to be?" The slap was strong, causing Eleanor to stagger and nearly fall. Blood dripped from her nose and mouth. She looked like a mess. "You, how dare you hit me?" She widened her eyes, finding it hard to believe. "What's wrong with hitting you?" "I'll hit you if I want to." "What can you all do about it?" Dustin's words were domineering. At that moment, he had no intention of holding back. If the Forrest family or the Welch family were related to Lana's death, they would all pay the price. "Reese, you're treading on thin ice." Eleanor's face twisted into a menacing expression. "I'm warning you, kneel before me and beg for forgiveness, or I'll bring in Scott Mosey, and he'll personally deal with you." The Cameron family immediately panicked at her words. "Dustin, you've really messed up this time. These two are the heiresses of influential families. If you lay a finger on them, it's like poking a bear in the eye. What are you waiting for? Get down on your knees and apologize. Otherwise, once Scott Mosey shows up, you're dead meat. It's one thing to look for trouble, but dragging us into it, you've brought nothing but trouble to the Cameron family." As Eleanor and Elena witnessed the panic-stricken faces of the Camerons, they grew smug. So what if Dustin could throw a punch? Could he really take on the Mosey's army? Once Scott showed up, even if Dustin had some extraordinary abilities, he would only be sending himself to an early death. "What? Are you scared now?" "Kneel before us," Eleanor demanded sternly. "Scared?" Dustin looked at her as if she were a fool. "Why don't you give it a try first and see if your call can get through?" "You think I'm bluffing? Fine, you better not regret it." Eleanor swiftly pulled out her phone and dialed Scott's number. After several unsuccessful attempts, she used Elena's phone to call, only to encounter the same unresponsive outcome. "What? Can't get through? Want to try it with my phone?" He sneered. "Don't get too cocky. Scott is busy right now and can't answer the call. I've sent him a message, and he'll arrive soon. When he arrives, it'll be the end for you." Eleanor threatened menacingly. Her blood was boiling. "No need to wait. Scott Mosey is already here," Dustin said. "Here? Where?" Eleanor and Elena scanned the surroundings. "Right here." He lightly tossed a raft head to their feet. The head, still wrapped in cloth, rolled a few times upon hitting the ground, freeing itself from its confinement. A blooded head lay there, clearly visible to everyone. Coincidentally, Scott's face perfectly aligned with Eleanor and Elena's gaze. Eleanor and Elena stared at each other, speechless. The sight of the severed head initially startled them, yet shock gripped them once they confirmed its identity, leaving them rooted to the spot. How is this possible? Scott Mosey is dead. Eleanor and Elena stood in shock, struggling to believe the sight before them. Scott had been perfectly fine that morning. How could he suddenly be dead? Who did this? Who dared to kill Seamus Godson? "You wanted to make a call, right? Go ahead, speak to him directly." Dustin approached and kicked Scott's head. Was it you? Eleanor managed to collect herself, her voice shaking. Did you kill him?" "That's right, it was me," he admitted bluntly. Scott Mosey had it coming. He was responsible for Lana's death. I wished I could kill him 100 times over. Are you crazy? Did you really kill Scott Mosey? He's Sir Mosey's godson. She was horrified. Whether he's a godson or Sir Mosey's biological son, he deserved to die. He stated coldly, "Mad, you're a madman. You're making enemies with the entire Mosey family," she exclaimed. Eleanor was genuinely scared now, even though she had seen a lot. Dustin was playing an unpredictable game with no reservations. He seemed capable of doing anything. This piece of shit was a complete lunatic. Reese, you've really messed up this time. Killing Sir Mosey's godson is like stirring up a hornet's nest. No matter how big Dragon Marsh is, there is nowhere for you to hide. Elena was clearly shocked by the turn of events. She always considered the Moseys her safety net, going out of her way to please Dahlia and Scott. Eleanor believed having their support would give her an advantage. However, she never expected Dustin actually to dare go against her main support. His action wasn't just bold. It was downright crazy. Dead? He's dead. Scott Mosey is actually dead. Dustin, do you even realize what you've done? This time, you've really messed us up. After a moment of shock, the Cameron family erupted in an uproar. They were filled with despair. With Scott dead, things had escalated. Once the Moseys started investigating it, the Cameron family would be in deep trouble. One person had to the plunge. "I was the one that killed Scott. I'll face the consequences," Dustin said calmly. Are you sure you can handle it?" Corey shouted in frustration. He added, "Mr. Mosey was part of Oakvale's ancient house family, a giant. What makes you think you can take on such a behemoth? You might be asking for trouble for yourself, but why drag us into this mess? Why you're a walking disaster." Exactly. All the Cameron family wanted was to sort things out. But by killing Mr. Mosey and presenting his head to us, you've thrown us into the lion's den. What were you thinking? The crowd expressed their anger toward Dustin. Scott had unresolved issues with the Cameron family. If Dustin hadn't shown up at their door with a severed head, they could have explained themselves and escaped from the situation. But now there seemed to be no way to clear their names. Dustin, you've really landed yourself in hot water. If you want to avoid dragging innocent people into this, return with us to the Mosey's mansion and face the consequences, Eleanor ordered firmly. While Scott's death wasn't her doing, ensuring Dustin's capture and delivering him to the Moseys would be a notable accomplishment. Reese, you just mentioned you took the plunges. I now demand you to surrender yourself. Eleanor joined in. She couldn't fathom how a loser like Dustin dared to kill an elite figure. He was clearly asking for trouble. "It seems you don't quite get it," Dustin stated nonchalantly. "I did kill Scott Mosey, but that doesn't mean I'm going to apologize for it. Are you seriously not worried about the Moseys coming after you for revenge?" Eleanor asked. "What do you think?" He retorted. That left both Eleanor and Elena momentarily speechless. After all, if Dustin feared retaliation, why would he have gone ahead and killed Scott? This loser that stood before them was undoubtedly a loose cannon. "And there's one more thing," Dustin added with an air of indifference. "Considering both of you were in cahoots with Scott, you're not exactly saints. You share some responsibility for Lana's death. I'll give you two options. First, kneel in front of Lana's memorial for 3 days and reflect on your sins. And then surrender half of your family fortune to compensate for the Cameron family's losses." Before he could finish, Eleanor quickly retorted, "You're delusional. Lana's death is none of our business. Stop making a fuss." Exactly. Forget about surrendering half of our family's fortune. I wouldn't even consider kneeling, Elena added firmly. A second-tier family like theirs would never stoop so low. If you don't agree, then there's only the second option is left. Dustin remained firm as he said, "I'll do whatever it takes to bring down both the Welch family and Forrest family. You'll be nothing but wreckage left." Wreckage? What a joke. Eleanor scoffed. "Reese, who do you think you are?" A countryside doctor challenging to major families. Exactly. You're barely keeping your head above water, yet you're threatening us. Let me enlighten you. I've discreetly tipped off the Moseys. Once their forces show up, there'll be no escaping for you, Elena declared. In their eyes, Dustin was already a goner, struggling for his life. I gave you a chance, but you didn't appreciate it. Well then, don't blame me for being ruthless, Dustin stated, grabbing his phone to send out a few messages. He had already reached out to every connection he had in Oakvale, aiming to make the Forrest and Welch families pay a hefty price. Nice try, Eleanor scoffed. Do you really think sending a few messages can rattle us? How pathetic. I've weathered storms you can't even imagine. Your pathetic threats mean absolutely nothing. If you doubt it, let's just wait and see. Dustin kept it brief. After all, actions spoke louder than words. Fine, I'm curious to see who's going down today. Eleanor remained unfazed. Reese, if you have the guts, don't run. The Moseys' forces will be here soon. Let's see if you'll still be so cocky, Elena warned sternly. Just as she spoke, an armored convoy suddenly burst into the Cameron Manor. The convoy consisted of military jeeps, each loaded with armed personnel, exuding an air of solemnity. A sizable yellow flag waved at the forefront, adorned with a single word Mosey. They're here. The Moseys' forces have finally arrived. Elena's face lit up instantly. Her message had worked. The Moseys were indeed swift. Dustin, your time's up. Now we're the ones in control. Eleanor laughed triumphantly. She acknowledged his combat prowess, effortlessly taking down a dozen martial artists on his own. It was truly impressive. However, she believed he couldn't stand against a military force, no matter how skilled he was. With dozens of fully armed elite soldiers and overwhelming firepower, even if Dustin had extraordinary abilities, daring to resist would be like stirring up a hornet's nest. In the end, this was just how things unfolded. When influence and power came into the picture, ordinary civilians could do nothing against them. It's over. It's all over now. Dustin, you're a walking disaster. You've led us to this wretched state. As the Moseys' forces loomed, panic and despair swept through the Cameron family members. Scott's head still rested on the ground. Once the people from the Moseys saw the head, nothing could save the Cameron family. Reese, weren't you feeling cocky just now? Let's see how things play out for you now. Elena sneered, reveling in the misfortune she believed awaited Dustin. The Moseys' convoy stormed into the Cameron Manor, coming to a halt at the entrance. The assistant general leapt out and led a fully armed squad of soldiers. They advanced with authority. Who called us here? With a stern expression, the assistant general scanned the memorial hall with sharp eyes. That was me. I'm Elena from the Forrest family. Elena quickly raised her hand and explained, General, I have a strong connection with Mr. Mosey. I just witnessed someone killing him here. You need to catch the murderer quickly. Who was the murderer? The assistant general asked in a low voice. Word of Scott's death had quickly circulated throughout the entire Mosey family. Dustin had stormed into Jadleaf Manor. He openly attacked Scott and severed his head. Upon learning of this, Seamus was furious and personally ordered harsh punishment for the assailant. The Moseys' forces were mobilized in no time, combing every inch of Dragon Marsh for the murderer. So when they received the tip, they hurried to the Cameron Manor. They had prepared to apprehend the culprit and avenge Scott. He's the murderer. Elena turned and pointed at Dustin. Then she smiled coldly. Not just him. Everyone from the Cameron family is his accomplice and must be arrested. Eleanor suddenly chimed in. Upon hearing this, the Cameron family members were instantly thrown into a state of panic. Miss Welch, this has nothing to do with us. We're in the dark here. You can't make baseless accusations. Yes, Miss Welch, we have nothing to do with Dustin. You can't falsely accuse us like this. Miss Welch, please spare us. We're willing to give up the formula. Please spare us. Many Cameron family members were terrified. dropping to their knees and pleading for mercy. As soon as they were labeled as accomplices, they knew they would be in serious trouble. Dustin furrowed his brows slightly, a glint of coldness in his eyes. He hadn't expected Eleanor to be so ruthless, willing to drag the entire Cameron family down in her quest for revenge against him. Eleanor was truly heartless. It's too late for your pleas now. Mr. Mosey is dead, and none of you are innocent. Eleanor remained unfazed. Perhaps you even manipulated Dustin into killing Mr. Mosey for revenge. She knew very well that Scott's death couldn't be appeased with a mere du bomb formula. No, absolutely not. Corey's face went pale, and he frantically denied it. Miss Welch, even if we had the courage, we wouldn't dare to harm Mr. Mosey. Dustin acted on his own, and it has nothing to do with us. If it truly has nothing to do with you, then why is Mr. Mosey's head in the Cameron Manor? How do you explain that? Eleanor questioned. We don't know. Dustin brought it here, Corey said mournfully. Save your excuses. Without the Cameron family's meddling, how could a mere martial artist dare to pull off something like this? She stated. That's right. The Cameron family is no different from Dustin. You're all in cahoots. Eleanor chimed in. This isn't right. It's so unfair. Corey, along with the entire Cameron family, kneeled on the ground. They pleaded and cried. If they couldn't shake off this accusation, it would mean the end for the Cameron family. At that moment, Mateo couldn't hold back his rage and roared. You vile woman! You heartless, vile woman! We did nothing to you. Why are you framing us? Mateo had promised to hand over the formula just to protect his family earlier, but Eleanor had betrayed them and now caused the doom of the Cameron family with just a few words. She was absolutely evil. Even in the face of pleas and rebukes from the Cameron family, Eleanor remained unfazed. She nodded at the Assistant General of the Mosey's mansion and declared, General, Mr. Mosey's death can't be in vain. These suspicious people must all be captured and punished severely to set an example and establish authority. Upon hearing this, the Assistant General nodded. He commanded and gestured to his men, seize all these culprits and subject them to thorough interrogation. Wait, Dustin stepped forward suddenly, his tone icy. I killed Scott, and it has nothing to do with the Cameron family. I'm ready to bear all the consequences. The Assistant General huffed. You, the murderer, will naturally face severe punishment, but these accomplices won't escape either. If any of you dare to touch the Cameron family, I guarantee you'll end up just like Scott. Dustin warned. His eyes were cold. What? Threatening me? You're truly blind to your impending doom. The Assistant General narrowed his eyes and pulled out his gun. Reese, dozens of guns are aimed at you. Do you think that will make a difference? I seriously doubt it. Eleanor sneered. Dustin, just surrender. You might get out of this with all your body parts intact. Eleanor taunted sarcastically. I'll say it again. Whoever dares to act recklessly will meet their end. Dustin's murderous intent filled the air. I see you won't regret it until you're staring death in the face. The Assistant General ordered, Men, take him down. Anyone who dares to resist is to be killed on the spot. With that command, armed soldiers swiftly loaded their guns and aimed at Dustin and the others. The Cameron family members, witnessing the scene, were struck silent, their nerves on edge. Tension hung thick in the air. Out of the blue, a dozen armed helicopters appeared above Cameron Manor. They hovered momentarily before lowering down ropes. Descending from the choppers were heavily armed elite soldiers. Their arrival felt almost surreal. It was a squad of celestial warriors, incredibly imposing and awe-inspiring at first sight, too. Instantly, the Cameron Manor was swarmed with people again. The elite soldiers wasted no time in surrounding the Mosey's mansion's forces. The Mosey's troops responded by turning their guns toward the intruders. Despite the difference in numbers, the newcomers clearly had the upper hand. Who the heck are you people? How dare you point guns at the Mosey's force? Are you asking for trouble? The assistant general snapped, anger etching his face. In Oakville, there weren't many brave souls willing to challenge the Moseys. Just because you're from the Moseys doesn't mean shit. You better clear out in 3 minutes or deal with the consequences. A crisp, cold, feminine voice suddenly came from above. Who's talking? The assistant general scanned the surroundings. Just then, a figure in fiery red leapt from the helicopter. With no ropes and no fancy equipment, she descended from the sky. There was a loud crash as the red figure landed on the ground, creating a dust cloud. In the next moment, a woman dressed in a red combat suit, sporting short white hair and breathtaking beauty, emerged from the dust. It was the goddess of war, Scarlet. Scarlet, the Scarlet Warrior. The assistant general couldn't help but tremble at the sight of Scarlet. Being in the military, he was well aware of Scarlet's reputation as the one and only goddess of war in Dragonmarsh. Her military prowess and decisive actions on the battlefield were enough to command respect from any man. Quick, drop your weapons. After a moment of shock, the assistant general swiftly signaled his subordinates to put away their guns. He was aware of Scarlet's notorious temper. After all, pointing guns at her could easily lead to a bloodbath. They might even be accused of rebellion, facing death without a chance to put up a fight. Why is Scarlet here? Eleanor and Elena exchanged surprised glances. Scarlet was a formidable figure that women in Oakville knew. Not only was she powerful and noble, but she also wielded significant military influence, earning favor from the royal family. In addition, Scarlet was exceptionally beautiful. She was ranked second on the beauty ranking list, stirring envy among countless women. A woman who embodied beauty, strength, and high status. There was no one else like her in the world. In comparison, those so-called wealthy young ladies were completely overshadowed. I was the one talking. Are there any issues? Scarlet approached the assistant general. Her vibe was full of authority, her sharp gaze fixed on the assistant general. No objections. The assistant general, visibly sweating, appeared meek before her. I unintentionally offended the goddess of war. I apologize. Enough with the excuses. Just get your people out of here, Scarlet ordered with an icy tone. What? The assistant general was stunned, looking flustered. He explained, My lady, we have wanted criminals of the Moseys here. I was ordered to apprehend them. Wanted criminals? Where? Scarlet inquired. Over to their goddess of warrior. He's the wanted criminal. Elena quickly pointed at Dustin without waiting for the assistant general to respond. Both the Spanner family and the Moseys mansion were ancient houses. They should collaborate to apprehend the criminal. And the Cameron family are his accomplices. They should be arrested and thrown into prison, Eleanor added. Without wasting words, Scarlet stepped forward and delivered two resounding slaps, leaving Elena and Eleanor bewildered. And my lady, why are you hitting us? Elena covered her face, looking genuinely aggrieved. Eleanor was equally puzzled. Was Scarlet out of her mind? Why would she resort to violence without any apparent reason? Did she not care about their reputation? What did you say? Say it again, Scarlet declared icily. Her authoritative demeanor rendered Elena and Eleanor speechless. I said, he's the criminal. Elena pointed at Dustin again. With a sharp slap, Scarlet sternly remarked, Try saying that again. My lady, aye. Elena stammered. She was on the brink of tears, feeling like she had been treated unfairly. She couldn't help but wonder what was happening. Was Scarlet irritated? What was wrong with her? Even though Elena was frustrated and seething with anger, she dared not utter a word. The assistant general from the Moseys was puzzled, but he was relieved that he kept his mouth shut earlier. Otherwise, he might have gotten a few slaps. Now, listen up. I'm only saying this once. Scarlet's icy gaze swept over everyone. Dustin is my friend, and the Cameron family is our business partner. If any of you start talking nonsense, don't blame me for beating you up. What, friends? The crowd gasped, utterly astonished. Who would have thought Scarlet was here because of Dustin? What kind of connections did he have to get the goddess of war here? My lady, are you serious? You're friends with this loser. Eleanor couldn't believe it. To her, Dustin was just a doctor with some fighting skills. How could he be friends with the high and mighty Spanner family? Yes, my lady. He's just a loser. How could you be friends with him? Elena blurted out. How dare you? Scarlett's expression soured, her irritation evident as she landed a hard kick to Elena's gut. Elena was sent flying. She crashed into a wall, coughing up blood and groaning. Earlier, Scarlett had given them a warning with a slap, but now she was genuinely angered. They were disrespecting Logan, and she was ready to show them the consequences of their words. Eleanor was shocked and rushed to help her up. Scarlett scoffed. Do I need your approval for my choice of friends? Elena coughed out another mouthful of blood, leaving her visibly pale and unsteady on her feet. Eleanor frowned. Her blood was boiling, yet she held back from saying anything. Even though they were angry, facing off with someone like Scarlett wasn't an option. They had no choice but to step back. What are you all still doing here? Scram! Scarlett barked in a commanding tone. The Mosey's assistant general trembled and kept his mouth shut. He quickly led his troops away. Even if the mission was crucial, it wasn't worth their lives. In all of Oakville, few would mess with Scarlett. Go quickly? Eleanor didn't dare linger and helped Elena leave the Cameron Manor. Wait, Dustin suddenly called out to them. What do you want? Eleanor felt a bit uneasy. She knew Dustin, backed by Scarlett's support, could bring trouble for her and Elena if he sought revenge. When you return, pass a message to the Welch and Forrest families. They're in for a rough ride. It's all on you too. And make sure to prepare your coffins. You'll need them soon. Now you can leave, he declared coldly. Eleanor wanted to retort but caught Scarlett's glare. Eleanor held back her words and said sternly, just because you have the Spanner family backing, you doesn't mean you can act recklessly. We'll see how things play out. With that, she helped the injured Elena and quickly left the Cameron Manor. While their plan might have failed, it didn't necessarily mean they had lost. Even though Dustin had Scarlett supporting him, Elena and Eleanor had the Moseys behind them. The outcome was still uncertain if it came down to a real confrontation. Eleanor and the others left, and the tension within the Cameron family finally began to ease. Mateo and the rest observed Scarlett, who maintained an impassive expression, feeling uneasy. While they were grateful for Scarlett's intervention, they couldn't quite fathom why she chose to help. In the eyes of the Cameron family, who felt like mere ants compared to the towering giants of the Spanner family, they couldn't fathom why anyone would be concerned about them. Then Scarlett offered a straightforward explanation. Don't overthink it. I helped you all because of Dustin. Dustin? The Cameron family's attention shifted to Dustin, their faces reflecting surprise and suspicion. Initially, Dustin was perceived as having no influence or background, merely a bold martial artist. But now, it seemed there was more to Dustin than they thought. If someone like Scarlett was willing to help him, then perhaps he wasn't as insignificant as they had presumed. In the face of everyone's surprise and skepticism, Dustin remained silent. He picked up Scott's head and placed it beneath Lana's photo. He whispered, Lana, your death has been avenged, and those involved will pay the price. Also, I'll protect your family so they won't suffer. Please rest in peace. In his heart, he silently said, Lana, you're one of the few friends I have. I'll remember you forever. After the somber moment, Dustin shifted his focus and looked at Mateo. Mr. Cameron, you might doubt my abilities, but I'll do my best to make amends and eliminate any threats to the Cameron family. Scott's death is just the beginning. Anyone against the Cameron family or with ill intentions will pay the price. Take care, and I'll take my leave. Dustin nodded respectfully. Accompanied by Scarlett, he hopped onto the helicopter, which took off from the manor. The helicopter fleet gradually vanished into the distance. Meanwhile, the Cameron family exchanged puzzled glances. No one expected this outcome. Eleanor and Elena had arrived with threats and coercion to pressure the Cameron family into surrendering the Do-Bomb formula. Unexpectedly, Dustin intervened, reprimanding the two women and avenging Lana's death. Then reinforcements from the Moseys arrived. Just when disaster loomed, Dustin called the Scarlet Warrior to the scene. Everything unfolded so unexpectedly, leaving the Camerons' emotions in a whirlwind. In the end, they came out unharmed and found protection from the Spanner family. It was truly a case of turning a crisis into an opportunity. The person who made it happen was someone they had underestimated all along. Dustin. Lana, you were right about Dustin. He's a responsible and capable man. Unfortunately, you can't be together anymore, Mateo said. His gaze fixed on Lana's photo, and tears welled up in his eyes. Despite the Cameron family overcoming the crisis, Lana would never open her eyes again. Silently, Dustin sat on the helicopter, gazing at the shrinking buildings below. His expression was somewhat melancholic. Logan, what's our next move? Scarlett asked tentatively. She had rushed over without a second thought upon receiving his message. Whenever he needed help, she was always ready to lend a hand without needing any explanation. Scott's death poses a problem. I shouldn't reveal my identity for now. And I need you to help settle matters at the Moseys. Dustin finally averted his gaze. No problem. Scarlett nodded. Seamus has plenty of adopted sons and daughters. Losing one or two won't bother him. I'll handle it personally. If they put up a fight, we're not afraid to go to war. She never accepted Anders to be called the god of war. If there were an opportunity, she'd be more than willing to have a showdown to prove who was truly stronger. And those two big-shot families, the Welch and Forrest families, acting all high and mighty. They really need a reality check, Dustin remarked casually. That's easy. Just dig up their family's dark history, expose them, and send them to prison. No need for elaborate plans, she replied. For the Spanner family, it was easy to take down the Welch and Forrest family. There was no need for intricate schemes. A simple command could make them pay for what they had done. This stark difference between the great families and ancient houses showcased the hierarchy. Even though the great families were incredibly wealthy, their riches and status didn't compare to the true power and influence of the ancient houses. That night, in a private hospital, Elena let out groans of pain. She would occasionally cough up blood. Scarlett's kick had caused internal injuries, and despite treatments by doctors, Elena was barely clinging to life. However, a full recovery seemed unlikely in the short term.